Hello everyone, it's Amanda Corbett. I'm here today to show you how to make this card. It's basically the same concept as the triple time stamping, except it's only got two panels. And it looks complicated, but I promise you it really isn't. So I'm going to show you just how easy this card is. I'm going to start off with a 4 1/4 by 11 inch piece of Sahara Sand cardstock that I've scored at 5 1/2 inches. Then I'm going to punch the bottom two corners with the corner rounder punch. Just like that. Now the base of my card is ready. Next, I'm going to cut a piece of Very Vanilla cardstock 2 inches by 5 1/2 inches. And I'm going to use Daffodil Delight ink and a sponge dauber. And I'm just going to start sponging, and make sure when you sponge to start off of the edge of the cardstock and use a swirling motion, move inward. Now I'm just going to make 2 diagonal stripes of Daffodil Delight ink. You don't have to cover the entire piece of cardstock. Next up is pumpkin pie. And I'm just going to fill in the remaining white space with pumpkin pie ink. And go ahead and sponge into the Daffodil Delight a little bit, that way you blend your colors. Next, I'm going to use Cajun Craze. And this I'm just going to use on top of the pumpkin pie to add a little bit more shadow. And like you did before, go out onto the Daffodil Delight a little bit to blend the colors. Now finally, I'm going to use just a little bit of Cherry Cobbler to create the darkest portion. Now I have my sponging complete. So next I'm going to take the En Francais background stamp and I'm going to ink it up with crumb cake. And now you can see, hopefully, the subtle font in the background. Now here comes the fun part, the double time stamping part, if you will. I'm going to take 2A glue pen, and I'm just going to apply a few stripes on the back of my strip. And I'm going to wait until the glue dries till it's clear. And then I'm going to stick it in place on my card front. And now I'm going to use Early Espresso ink and my French foliage stamps. I just love these leaves. And you want to intentionally stamp off the edge of your strip. And just keep on filling in until you're happy with it. I'm going to call that good. Now I'm going to clean off the large leaf on my Stampin' Scrub. And I'm going to use my embossing buddy over this area here where I want my gold leaf to go. So now I'm just going to ink up my leaf with Versamark and stamp it where I want it. Once again, intentionally going off of the edge of the sponged cardstock. Now just heat emboss your leaf. Nice and shiny. Now we're just going to pull this panel off. And I'm going to use glue stick to adhere this piece onto a 2 1/8 by 5 1/2 inch piece of Early Espresso cardstock. There we go. Now we can go ahead and glue this down onto the card front. And you just want to try to line up your leaf images Next up is the greeting. On a scrap of very vanilla cardstock, I stamped the greeting from Friendly Phrases in Early Espresso ink. And I just punched that out with the decorative label punch. Now I've also used the decorative label punch on a scrap of Early Espresso cardstock and a scrap of pumpkin pie cardstock. I'm going to take my paper snips and cut down the center of each label, and then I'm just going to snip off these little points. Okay. Now I'm going to use two-way glue pen to adhere my labels together, and I'm just creating a mat for my greeting. Now I'm going to glue on my greeting label. There we go. Now I'm going to grab my fabulous new Stampin' Pierce mat and paper piercer, and I'm just going to pierce a hole at both of the points in the label. And I'm going to add a gold brad into each of those holes. I'm just going to set this aside. Next up, I cut a piece of Early Espresso baker's twine about 3.5 feet long. For this next part, I would normally use snail adhesive, but my snail runner has seemed to have disappeared. But sticky strip will also serve the purpose. So I'm going to take a small piece of sticky strip, and I'm going to stick it down about where I want my label to go. I'm going to stick the end of this baker's twine just right in that sticky strip at an angle. And I'm going to take it and wrap it around the card front. And each time I pass the sticky strip, I'm just going to press it in place. If your baker's twine was a little bit longer than where your sticky strip or your snail was, you could stick it down and then lift up the end and trim it with your paper snips. But in this case, I got lucky and trimmed it just right. So now I'm going to stick a couple dimensionals onto the back of my greeting label. And then I'm going to stick that down in place right over where that sticky strip is to hide those baker's twine ends. And there you have it. I hope you get a chance to try it out and have fun. Bye.